I'm Luke Kenley. This is the State Budget Committee meeting, and so we'll call the meeting to order. And the minutes of the last meeting have been distributed. Are there any amendments to the minutes themselves? Okay, move to approve the minutes. Seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. First off, we are here at the State Fairgrounds, and we had a chance to tour the grounds generally and went to the Glass Barn and saw the new Coliseum, which is a fabulous building, and we're very pleased to be here. We want to thank Cindy Hoy, who runs the State Fairgrounds, for all their work on these projects, but also for hosting us today. We are webcasting the meeting live, and so I'm going to ask those that are sitting at the Budget Committee table here, if starting with Susan, do we have microphones? We don't really have microphones scattered too thoroughly around here, do we? Maybe we could pass that mic down there so everybody could introduce themselves. Let's just go ahead and identify ourselves. Yeah, Eric, maybe you can carry that thing around to people.
Susan Preble, Fiscal Analyst for the Senate Democrat Caucus.
State Senator Karen Talion, Senate Democrat Representative on the Budget Committee.
Tim Skinner, State Senator, District 38, Vigo and Clay Counties.
Eric Gonzalez, House Democrat Fiscal Analyst.
Terry Gooden, State Representative, District 66, Scott, Jefferson, and Clark Counties. Democrat representative on the Budget Committee from the House.
Ben Tooley, House Republican Fiscal Analyst.
Eric Turner, State Representative from Cicero.
David Dukes, Fiscal Analyst for the House Republicans.
Tim Brown, House Republicans, District 41, Chairman of Ways and Means.
And Luke Kenley, State Senator and Chair of the Budget Committee this year.
David Reynolds, Fiscal Analyst for the Senate Republican Caucus.
Brian Bailey, State Budget Director.
Ryan Mishler, State Senate. I represent Kosciuszko, Elkhart, Marshall, and St. Joe counties.
Krista Rivera, Fiscal Analyst with the Senate Republican Caucus.
I'm Jim Landers. I'm with Legislative Services Agency.
Deanna Owari, Deputy Budget Director with the State Budget Agency.
Thank you. We also have with us, I think Cindy had to leave, and Andre Lacey, who's been chairman of the State Fair Commission, also had lunch with us. Is Andre still here? Did he have to leave? We do have several area legislators with us today. Representative Cherry, who's on he's a legislative appointment to one of the State Fair Commissions, and then Senator Merritt, and then Representative Hale, whose district is near here, is present with us today, and I see Representative Pryor and Representative Bartlett was here. Is he still here? Yes, he is. Are there any other legislators that we should recognize? Any other dignitaries? Everybody else is here for business. Thank you. We will go ahead and start, let's see, through the agenda, and we've placed the agenda. The agenda has been published, and so it's placed on the table for discussion. It's been distributed to all the members, released to the public. Are there any amendments to the proposed agenda at this time? No amendments. Okay. Seeing none, why we will proceed with the agenda and start with our agency projects. First, we have the Department of Corrections, and we have Kevin Orm. And Kevin, I think you have two projects that you want to describe for us. We have quite a few items on the agenda that are, because we haven't had meetings for a while, and so committee members, if you have questions, feel free to answer them. Otherwise, we'll kind of speed through the agenda because we have some review items we need to cover as well this time. Kevin,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone.
The first project is for masonry restoration at the Reception Diagnostic Center located in Plainfield, Indiana. It's a 250,000 square foot, 5-story cell house type building with ancillary activities that go on. It is where every offender incarcerated in the Indiana Department of Correction goes, from the lowest of felons to the worst of felons. The facility had, we've noticed some masonry degradation in it a couple years ago. Further investigations showed that when it was built in 1968, they had failed to put some proper control joints in the mortar. Not only does this fix the failing mortar of the structure, but it repairs it. It'll be good for another 20 years, would be our expectation. This facility is in excellent condition. This is the only outstanding master plan item with that facility.
Okay, questions for Kevin? Okay, project number 2 is security control computers.
Correctional Industrial Facility located in Pendleton, Indiana, was Indiana's first attempt at a computer-controlled prison. It has served for 27 years using the same security control computers to run everything from doors to lighting controls. Very simply, the computers have failed. They've become antiquated. This project replaces all of those, once again, with another life expectancy of 20 years. We feel very fortunate we've got 27 years out of that early design.
Questions for Kevin regarding this project? Yes, Representative Gooden.
Is it maintaining the continual digital system set up now, or are you going back to antiquated locks, or how's the system doing? You're just replacing the computer system, or?
We are. We're replacing the computer-controlled system, sir, with what's called an open protocol system that we're using all across the agency now. Replacing the doors and locks is cheaper for the infrastructure, but it's more costly in the human operational element. So in the current setup, one officer in a control pod, a hardened control pod, can control virtually every door in the facility. So it provides for good security, but it actually lessens our staff workload. Keeps the number of staff to a manageable level. And sir, I might add, 30 minutes ago, the tattoo removal machine that you had asked me about last meeting, I promised you an answer, is the SOP is finalized, the repairs to the machine are funded, and I expect the plan to go operational within 30 days. I was going to brief you on that before the hearing.
I appreciate that very much. Can you use that on legislators also, or is that?
Have a good afternoon, sir.
Thank you, Kevin. Next, we have the Indiana State Police with Major Steve Hillman. We have vehicle replacement of $2 million.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thanks for the opportunity to present this request to you. $2 million out of our building fund to purchase 80 new Dodge Chargers. Right now, we're pulling in our patrol vehicles at around 184,000 miles. This is high mileage areas for us. We've identified also 100 of our patrol vehicles and other enforcement vehicles that are at the 180,000 mile mark or above. This obviously presents us with increased maintenance costs. It also requires us to have more pool cars out there so that we can keep our troopers on the road. This $2 million would help augment our operating account, the money that we have dedicated to vehicles in that, to allow us to start trying to get the mileage down on these patrol vehicles.
Questions for Major Hillman? This or anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Mike Smith with the Commission on Natural Resources, and Mike has several items here to deal with. So, Mike, why don't you just start down the list, and we'll see if anybody's got questions.
Thank you.
Mike, the stuff that I'd ask you to bring.
Yes.
If you have that available, if somebody could bring that up, maybe you could pass it around to the members.
The design plans
while you're
for
talking.
Goose Pond,
This is the Goose Pond project, and they're building a facility there, and it's somewhat expensive because of the amount of infrastructure they have to put in. So I thought it might be helpful for the members to at least get a rendering or some view of what's going on. So while Mike's making the presentation, you guys can look at that.
Very good, thank you. Goose Pond is a 8,000-acre fish and wildlife property in Greene County near Linton, Indiana, purchased in 2005. The Visitor Center is a $3 million project. $1.1 million is for utility replacement, parking lot, sidewalks, external lighting, and other infrastructure. $300,000 is for an interpretive area outside the building, and $1.6 million is for the 4,900 square foot regional office. The Visitor Center, which also serves as a regional fish and wildlife office, includes 8 offices. Goose Pond had an estimated 75,000 visitors last year, coming from 19 states and 53 counties. John Davis and I, plus several other fish and wildlife employees, have met several times with community leaders, including the mayor of Linton, Representative Ubalor, Senator Waterman, to discuss the design plans, which I believe you have just seen. Everyone is on board and anxious to begin this project.
Mike, they have, you said they had 75,000 visitors last year, so is this facility designed to enhance the number of people that might be visiting? And
We certainly anticipate that.
Okay.
Schools, other community events, and the 75,000 was strictly voluntary sign-ins. We have no gate there at the Fish and Wildlife Facility, so it's a low estimate.
Any questions regarding this project, number 4? Okay, number 5 is an eradication program.
Yes, eradication of invasive species. The divisions of entomology and state parks and reservoirs are requesting $125,000 to continue work to eradicate invasive species, primarily kudzu. This is an ongoing effort to control the unwanted growth. The money will pay for labor, herbicides, and transportation.
Questions? Number 6.
Picnic tables and grills. State Parks and Reservoirs is requesting $359,000 to replace approximately 3,000 picnic tables and grills throughout the 34 properties. And these items have the expectant life of about 15 years. These 3,000 tables and grills represents only 4% of the total tables and grills that we have throughout the state parks. The equipment will be purchased from Penn Products, built by inmate labor.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. I had to double check the math. And
we must have grills and tables all over this state,
Yep,
Mike.
yep.
Questions? No questions.
Fort Harrison Dog Park. State Parks and Reservoirs is requesting $230,000 to finalize the development of the 20-acre dog park at Fort Harrison State Park. The dog park was officially opened in October of 2013, but still needs a modern restroom, sidewalks which are ADA accessible, along with a canine dock, 21 benches, security lighting, asphalt paving, and 2 shelters, which will be purchased through Penn Products. Annual passes cost $75, and to date in 2014, we have sold 342.
Wow.
We anticipate 500 plus annually, which would generate about $35,000 on an annual basis. It's very popular.
Chairman Brown.
You talked about the annual passes. Are the annual passes for any facility where DNR has dog accessibility?
This is the only dog park that we have.
So this is the only, a pass only gets you into this facility?
That is a correct statement.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, number 8 is the Green Sullivan State Forest and Clark State Forest cabins.
Yes. The Division of Forestry seeks funding to make site improvements and construct and place 35 cabins in Green Sullivan and Clark State Forests. It is anticipated that 20 cabins will be placed in Green Sullivan and the remaining 15 would be placed at Clark. Through this committee, we have had comfort stations approved to complement both of these properties for enhanced recreational opportunities. The cabins will be built by inmate labor at Branchville Correctional Facility. DNR will supply the design and all of the materials to include Indiana lumber. The cabins that we already have at 4 of our properties, and assuming current usage rates, the return on investments is 3 years after installation of all cabins, which is estimated to be in 2016.
Okay. Any questions? Senator Talion.
Mike, can you just explain a little bit about, I thought that at the state forest, as opposed to a state park, that you didn't have facilities like this?
This is relatively new. We have 2 state recreational areas that are technically within the Division of Forestry, Deem Lake and Starve Hollow, that currently have several of these cabins for about the last 2 years, and they've been so successful that we did want to expand that opportunity.
So is there like a main, there's no like main lodge or?
No, not at
So-
all. These are what we refer to as camper cabins.
So how do you get one of these?
They're
How do you sign up?
$35 a night, and you can go online at our reservation center.
Really?
Yep. And it's relatively small. I mean, gosh, what was the dimensions, Greg? 12 by 28.
Okay, all
Yep.
right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you know how many cabins they make at Branchville? I've been down there to watch them make these cabins, and Senator Talion, they're really nice. I
Yeah.
mean, they'd be a nice weekend
Yeah.
to stay. Do you
Takes
know
about a month and a half per cabin. I do know that, but I don't know. They've probably have built us, I'd say 30 over the last 2.5, 3 years.
Okay.
Questions or comments further? Thank you. Is that the last one for you, Mike? Okay. Then we have the Indiana Veterans Home, Jim Klaus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Jim Klaus. I'm from the Indiana Veterans Home. The Indiana Veterans Home is requesting $655,000 from the Indiana Veteran Building Fund to cover additional expenditures arising from the renovation work on MacArthur Hall. The renovation on MacArthur Hall was previously approved in April 2013 from the Budget Committee for a grant of $5.7 million, of which 65% was from the VA Veterans Administration grant. At the beginning of construction, mold was discovered at the facility. The mold mediation resulted in an effort to replace drywall, plumbing, cleaning, ductwork, and replace the 30-year-old heating induction units in each of the rooms. This request amounts represents what's needed to cover phase 2 of the project change order. It also includes $155,000 out-of-scope repairs, namely for exterior sealant and shaft wall replacement, which must be addressed to prevent further damage to the newly renovation patient rooms and also to comply with the fire safety codes. Any questions?
Jim, this MacArthur Hall, so really, when you count the federal money and then you add the 655, we're over $6 million on this one building. Is that right?
That's, well, included in that grant was also money for the EMR telephone system.
Okay.
There's about $1 million that was for other things in this grant.
Is this a residential facility
Yes,
up
it is,
there?
for veterans.
How many people do you have? How many rooms do you have, or how many people do you house
There's
there?
122 rooms that will be available when this is completed.
123.
123.
Okay. Any other questions regarding this project? Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
LaRue Carter State Hospital, Jeff Babb.
Thank you. We're requesting replacement of the phone switch and gear at LaRue Carter Memorial Hospital. The equipment was installed in the 1980s. The parts have become extremely rare. The system's very unreliable and needs updated.
Questions? Thank you for coming today, Jeff. Appreciate it. Indiana School for the Deaf, Don Adams, I think you have 2 items.
Good afternoon. We are here requesting $198,000 to reimburse our funds for emergency repairs that occurred in January during the winter storm. We had the perfect storm of loss of power and resulting in freezing in the pipes. Power was out for 20 hours and the temperatures dropped and the winds were strong and all of our heaters froze. We lost actually 150 heaters, froze and busted and had to be repaired.
I don't know if anybody can help me or not, does the state carry any insurance, or do we just self-insure on all this type of activity? Do you have any idea, Brian? It's all self-insurance, okay. Well, that's too bad, that's a real tragedy, a lot of loss there. And then item number 12, window replacement.
Yes, we are requesting $747,000 to replace windows in 4 of our buildings. 2 of the buildings are connected and they do house the elementary school, and the other building is our gymnasium. These windows are very old and we're partially responsible for some of the damage we received from the winter storm because they are single pane windows. And we did lose every single heater in our elementary school.
Any questions on item 12? Senator Talion.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions because this looks really strange to me. You have 150 like separate heating units? Why?
We actually, they're univents, so they're built up against the wall so you can get fresh air in. And we actually have more than 150. That's the 150 that busted. We have several hundred that are on campus. It's just the way they were designed and put into the buildings. Some of them you just can't put rooftop units on top of the roof. You don't have space in the ceilings. There's not enough room to run ductwork. So these are the best things that they could put in with standalone units.
Wow. And how old are these buildings?
1960s, 1964, 65 on most of them.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Okay, thank you. The blind school, Carl
That would be me,
Brown,
sir.
that's you,
Yes, sir.
okay. Do you take care of both places, Carl?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And the Indiana School for the Blind and Visually Impaired is also asking for a window replacement project that would take care of buildings Lambert, Churchman, and Wilson. Those buildings were also built in the early 1960s. The windows are original to that. Lambert is the elementary side of it. Churchman is where they have the kitchen. And the Wilson area would be the hallway windows. Again, they're all single pane and original to construction.
Any questions? Thank you, Carl. Department of Transportation, Mark Joseph.
Excuse me, sir. We also had an auditorium.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
You have another one, don't you? Okay.
Yes, sir, we do.
Go right ahead.
We're going to ask for
Thank you,
funding for the HVAC and the natatorium. That building was built in 1997. They have went through literally 22 compressors for that system since 1997. I've been involved with the deaf and the blind school both since 2012, and this is one of the first things that came up. And we've lost a compressor since I've been over both of those schools last year, and it cost $10,000 just to replace the one. So you can imagine what 22 have cost since 1997. And this is going to repipe it, put new ductwork in, a new system.
Don't we get like warranties?
Generally, you do. In the beginning, the ones that I've dealt with in the past, you get 4 or 5 years on a compressor. But then after that, as the warranties go down, you're not going to get another 5 years for every compressor that they put in. So eventually that warranty is going to go out.
all of these projects at both of the schools, of course, they're expensive because these are larger buildings.
Yes, sir.
And it looks, to the untrained eye, it looks like we're spending an awful lot of money on some buildings that appear to be already have some age on them. And so I don't know, when was the last time that, has there been a major facilities review of either the deaf or the blind school of their facilities in recent years that says, here's the condition of your assets and your properties, and your best choice is just to continue to repair everything as it appears to wear out or fall apart, or should you consider some other approach to the occupancy of buildings? I mean, when's the last time that some question like that's been raised?
I think a master plan was done maybe 8 years ago, just off the top of my head. I'm not for sure if I'm
Do you
correct on
think
that.
it was for both of those facilities?
Yes, sir. I do think they were done
Okay.
around the same time. The buildings, to me, are in fair shape. There's just some things that, when I got there, I was asked to address.
Yes.
And these are the most critical things for both schools that I felt like needed to be addressed immediately. And as we move on over the next couple of bienniums, you'll see those numbers come down, because those are the most critical things that we need to get taken care of. For instance, the last budget meeting that I attended, you approved HVAC for Alumni Hall.
Right.
All right, it's $700 and some thousand,
Right.
but at the same time, we lost 40 heaters in there over the winter because of their age, louvers not closing off, cold air getting to them, not to mention not having power for 20 hours. And literally, we ordered a generator to come in, it showed up, and 10 minutes after they showed up, power came on.
Right.
So it's one of those things that I'm looking long-term as we do these, like I said, over the next few bienniums, you'll see those costs come down, but we're trying to get the most critical things outside of the building and mechanical, and then you can move inside to where I don't think it would be near as costly as some of the mechanicals and the windows that you're looking at.
Well, these things do look expensive. I don't know, Brian, whether the budget agency has the ability or has time to kind of circle back and review projects. It seems to me that in the last couple, 3 years, we've had a lot of projects of this nature and I share Senator Tallion's observation about maybe the age of these heating units there. You kind of wonder what kind of a system that is. And so I don't know, that might be something that maybe your agency might want to take a look at overall on the condition and suitability of those buildings that we have out there. We don't necessarily want to go buy all new buildings, but if you're just fixing buildings that are just going to continue to run down, then becomes a different kind of a problem. So maybe you can think about that, or somebody on your staff can take a look at those and see if maybe even in preparation for the next budget cycle, if there's something that we need to be thinking about there. Any other questions for Carl? Okay. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Department of Transportation then, Mark Joseph. Mark, you have a couple of items.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. As he said, my name is Mark Joseph. I'm NDOT Director of Operations and Innovation and Development. Department of Transportation has two projects on the agenda today. The first is construction of a salt building at our new Bloomfield unit project site, and the architectural and engineering fees for the construction of the new Bloomfield unit building and the construction of the new Lagodi unit building. The Bloomfield unit and the Lagodi unit are being relocated to new properties that have access to city sewer and city water. In addition, the Lagodi unit is a combo unit, and the existing Shoals unit and Washington unit will be combined into the newly built Lagodi unit site. The existing unit sites will be sold after the operations are relocated. The Indiana Department of Transportation formally requests funding for the amount of $405,000 for the architectural and engineering design of the new Bloomfield unit and the new Lagodi unit. Just to give you a sense of the condition of the current facilities as they exist, the current Bloomfield unit building was built in 1966, is 48 years old. Shoals unit was built in 67, and the existing Washington unit was built in 1964. The existing facilities have significant safety, environmental, and operational concerns, and I can get into some of those details if you like, but they really present OSHA issues, employee safety issues, and environmental issues in the current sites the way they're configured.
Questions? Chairman Brown.
Thank you. You said once the units, you have the new units online, you think you'll be able to dispose or sell these older properties or the properties you have now?
Yes,
What
sir.
will be the concerns environmentally to get a sale on those properties?
I can't speak to that. I think there's, particularly in the Washington unit, I think there's the local community's interested in the facility. I think it'll depend on what type of operation they're going to put into that facility. Some of the environmental issues with us is salt and the brine runoff of that going into watersheds, so it'll depend on their use of it.
So the success in selling units where we've done this in the past has been okay, above average, pretty good?
I don't have that information with me today, but I'm not aware of any issues that we've had in selling other sites.
Senator Talion, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I did. I'm looking at item 15, the 400,000 on the A&E, on the unit buildings. How much are the buildings going to cost if the A&E is this much money?
Sure. The Bloomfield unit building is estimated to be $2.2 million, and the Lagodi unit building is estimated to be $3.2. It's a little bit bigger because it's a combination unit, you know, as part of the consolidation, and the design and engineering fees fit within the Department of Public Works formula for what those fees should be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Second project on the agenda is the Bloomfield Unit Salt Building. We are requesting $750,000 for the construction of this new salt building. This building will be sized in accordance with our 5-year average salt usage is how we're going to size this. The current salt dome, which is actually a dome at Bloomfield, is a different design, again has environmental and safety issues around it. Some of the issues with this type of salt facility is salt must be offloaded as it's delivered outside. It also doesn't accommodate interior loading of salt during snow fights, which is, you know, current NDOT best practices in design. All that has to occur outside in snow with a lot of backing, creating safety issues for employees. The existing salt building, in the way that the site is graded at Bloomfield, storm runoff runs into it and then runs off the property. So this new building and the new Bloomfield site will correct all of those issues.
Questions on item number 16? Thank you. Department of Administration, Jason Larison. Are we going to get lighter doors going in and out of the north end of that building?
No, I thought it was, no.
Takes 3 legislators to get a door open right now.
Down in the basement, yeah.
Unfortunately, I can't make those wooden doors any lighter than what they are. I do apologize for that. I'm Jason Larison. I'm state architect with the Department of Administration. The doors actually in question here are the west doors,
Okay.
which face out to Ora Plaza, lower level. It is the only accessible entrance into the State House. Currently, the doors that are there are degrading. We have regular maintenance issues, both from electronics in terms of securing and for the controls that allow the doors to open up for accessibility issues. With this project, we will replace those doors, put in new electronics, and have a vestibule in place to help control, especially during the cold weather when the legislative session is going on, help control some of the heat loss that we have from that hallway.
That is the only ADA accessible entrance that we have in the State House.
Yes, directly into the State House. If you were to go through the Government Center, you could
Yeah.
take the tunnels
Right.
in, but outside of that, no, these are
Right.
the only accessible
Well, we
entrances.
probably better have those be in good shape then. Other questions? see Representative Klinkers here with us. Good to have you, Sheila. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, turning to university projects, we have Dr. Tom Morrison at Indiana University has a few items to discuss with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Tom Morrison, Indiana University. I've got 4 projects for you this afternoon. The first one is on the Bloomington campus. It is the Wright Quad dining renovation. Primary purpose of this project is to renovate the behind the servery areas of the dining hall, the food prep areas, install new freezers, new refrigeration units, and a new loading dock. Some of this will be in addition to the building. The new loading dock is critical because when this building was built, food wasn't delivered the way it is today, and so semi-trucks now have to block a street to deliver food to this dining hall. So we're creating a new loading dock that is off the street so that we can improve traffic safety and for emergency vehicles. Cost of the project is $3.7 million and will be funded from residential services and dining programs.
Questions on item number 1? No questions.
Second project is also on the Bloomington campus. This is the northwest quadrant parking improvements, but to focus your minds, I know many of you have been on the Bloomington campus. This is the large parking area that is just north of the football stadium and Assembly Hall, large gravel parking lot on the corner of Dunn and the bypass. We are looking to renovate that lot to improve the drainage of the area and as well as pave that parking lot. One of the things that we know is that we want to move more cars from the central campus out to the stadium area every day to improve the traffic flow and the parking for students and faculty and staff on the main campus. If you were to look at a Google map right now of that parking area, you would see all the cars on a daily basis parked on the paved part of the lot just west of the football stadium and nobody parking on the gravel. And all of us would do the same thing. You know, you'll park on gravel one time for a special event, come to the state fair, but you won't do it every day. And so that's one of the problems we have is getting students to park out there and leave their cars out there for a week at a time on a gravel parking lot. So we're going to pave all that parking and be able to provide better access for students. And one of the things we're exploring now as a means of affordability, we're thinking about offering that as free parking for students. So that right now students do have to pay for parking, and so this would be an option for them to store their cars during the week. And different than when we all went to college, most students come to us today with cars. And so this provides us another opportunity to quote-unquote store those cars. Be happy to answer any questions.
So this is not to provide more paved parking because we're going to have better football and basketball teams and need more.
Not at all. This gets used for 6 or 7 football games, and a part of it gets used for basketball, but not all of it. We did find also that during the winter months, when the parts that are used for basketball, we push snow on it, but then the ice settles in valleys in the gravel, and it becomes very slippery, and so this will improve that area as well. Price estimate on this is it's just short of 2,000 parking spaces. It is a very big parking lot, $6.8 million coming from parking services funds and campus construction funds, campus improvement funds, and we have just bid this project, and it is coming in at about 20% low. So it'll be a lot less than what we state here.
I know I'm probably severely dating myself as to my age here, but do you have any restrictions on student access to having vehicles on campus? I mean, can everybody just brings whatever they want?
No, many universities used to restrict whether students could bring cars. We do not anymore, and again, so therefore it has increased the issue of having to find parking spaces for those cars during the week.
Used to have a lot better parties on campus when you couldn't get a car. Any other questions? Yes, Senator Talion.
Thank you. How many acres is 2,000 cars?
It's about, off the top of my head, I think it's about 40.
40?
Yeah.
How much does it cost to build a parking garage?
Very good question, and Mr. Chairman, Senator Kenley asked me that same question.
Did you ask that question?
No, not publicly.
Oh, duh, okay.
We investigated that, and the issue with that is that for that many parking spaces, because we build lots of parking garages too across our system, we would be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of about $22 to $25 million. And the benefit of a parking garage is that it has churn. You really make them worthwhile when you can move the cars in and out all day long. Well, this is an area that we're looking to store cars, and we're going to pass that cost on to the students. And so in order to pay for that $22 or $25 million, it's cheaper for us to do this and to pave it because we have the property as opposed to just go up with that number of spaces.
All right, then let me ask you one more question. Isn't paving parking lots kind of environmental, I mean, aren't there environmentally better solutions to the pervious surface?
We are using porous asphalt in the parking lot in order to improve the drainage. And part of this parking lot will have certain green areas that the water will flow to shed naturally. But the pavement is, I'm trying to think of what it's called.
Yeah, I couldn't remember what it's called either. But
It's pervious pavement,
yeah.
I think. But the water goes through it. That was one of the things that, because for that size of an area, we did not want to have to build all the retention ponds that would go with it. And
40, you said 40
Yeah, right,
acres of
right.
parking space is like
Right.
really a lot to just blacktop.
Right, and so you also see that we are planting 700 trees on the space
Well, I didn't
as
see
well.
that in here. That wasn't on here. Thank
So
you.
So if you required every registered student who wanted to have a car available to leave the campus, and you required that they park out there and assessed a fee of $10 a month for that, you could just pay for it that way, couldn't you?
That's essentially how it does get paid for.
Okay.
But what we're trying to, because students can also park on the main campus, we are trying to look at ways to incent them to park out in this location.
Right. Well, that's certainly, I agree with that thought, because there's a lot of traffic down there, and there's no parking in the campus. Okay, on from the parking discussion.
Third
Sorry,
project.
Senator Talley, one more shot here.
One more. Why is it that we can't just let them park on gravel? Run that by us again?
They don't want to because it harms their cars.
Yeah, those 10-year-old cars.
Oh.
Is that the cars going past every day generate all the gray dust and the rocks fly up and all that kind of thing, and so nobody wants to store their car in a gravel parking lot. And
Senator Talley, you're like me. You're beginning to date yourself here.
I have an old car, yeah. Whatever.
Okay. Teeter quad window replacement.
Teeter quad window replacement, residence hall window replacement. This will replace windows for the first time on Teeter Quad. Teeter Quad is nearing, I believe, 50 years of age, and we are replacing roughly 800 windows, plus all the door entries to the building. Cost of this project is $2.6 million, and also funded from residential services.
Questions? Okay, item number 4, a new student activities center for IU East. That sounds exciting.
IU East in Richmond does not at present have any of it large gathering space for students, nor for student recreation. So in large function, we are adding a single gymnasium space, plus a space, it'll be a space that they can do events, ceremonies and things like that. It'll seat about 1,200 people. We don't have any space of that size on the campus. It also can be shared by Ivy Tech, as you know, which is right next door. This will be in a small addition to Springwood Hall, where the existing recreation room is, and so it's an addition there. $5 million being funded from the campus and private philanthropy.
questions? I'm sure the students over there will appreciate this. Is that the end of yours?
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Gooden.
Does this include the destruction of Assembly Hall and building a new basketball arena, please?
I shared earlier in the day that I am likely to be before you before the end of the calendar year with a proposal for the renovation of Assembly Hall. We are working on that design right now, and we expect that that'll be before you before the end of the calendar year.
Indiana is the basketball capital of the nation, and Indiana University, of course, they're the center of the state. I'm not saying anything about Purdue now, but they have got the worst basketball facility in the entire nation. The worst. You can't see anything unless you're sitting right on the floor. Just a sidebar. Thank you,
And with
Chairman.
that comment, we'll move on to Purdue University. Now, Kevin, I am intrigued that somehow this next project, which involves a $1 a year lease, has to do with the hogs and the abattoir and the
It
Smith
does.
Hall. So you need to explain all of this.
Yes, sir, I will be happy to. In fact, you're probably one of the few people that knows what an abattoir is,
Yeah.
just from the name. The first project that we have on your agenda this morning or this afternoon is a land lease. We are going to be leasing approximately 1 1/3 acre of land that is located at the south part of our campus below the railroad tracks in the service and support area to LifeCell Corporation. And LifeCell in turn will be building a facility on this at their cost and at
Okay.
their operating cost as well. And we will jointly share this facility. We will utilize this for the processing of the hogs, as we typically do on campus in our Smith Hall operation, along with beef and lamb and poultry for meat processing as our meat science program. And so we will be moving the pork side of that into this new facility. What LifeCell gets out of this is going to be a state-of-the-art research facility, and they will be harvesting the hides of the hogs that they use for medical devices. And I happen to have a couple examples of that product that they produce out of this process here, if you'd care to see these. I didn't get the chance to bring any pork tenderloins with me from the other half of this today, but and so this is an excellent opportunity. LifeCell sought us out because of the depth and breadth of operations we have, not only from the animal side of this, but also the biotechnology side. And so we get a facility that we can utilize for us for free at no taxpayer cost. They get the research side and the cooperation with Purdue University. And so we think this is an excellent opportunity.
Sounds like a good deal for us. Questions? Okay. Number 6.
Number 6, this is Lynn Hall in our School of Veterinary Medicine. We're going to be replacing the HVAC systems in our surgery and recovery suites. That's one of the things on the last accreditation that the folks felt that we needed to address fairly quickly. And so we're going to be doing that with this project.
Yes, Chairman Brown.
I see that you're using a repair and rehabilitation bond issuance on that. Are you having any bonds retired? Is this an additional bond on the R&R?
This is the authority that you will likely recall you gave us $60 million worth of bonding authority. And so this is towards the end of that $60 million. We probably have about $3 or $4 million left of that beyond this issue of the original $60 million.
Yeah. I think, Kevin, refresh our memories, but I think this happened a cycle or two ago when we were not putting any money into R&R because of our budget restrictions, and so we gave you some authority in that regard.
That's
Is
correct.
that correct?
And then we use our own resources then to pay that debt back.
And the bond issuance are about for how long?
Typically 20 years.
Other questions or comments on item number 6? Number 7.
Number 7, Young Hall, we're going to replace the electrical service to this facility. This was originally a graduate student residence hall on campus. It's now been converted to house primarily our information technology staff. The electrical service to this building is original, and we have some potential issues, particularly with arc flash. So we'd like to address this.
Questions? Okay, number 8.
Number 8 is another interesting project, Mr. Chairman. This is the site development for the Center for Aging Infrastructure, and it has nothing to do with older individuals. It really has something more to do with old buildings and old bridges and old roads. And so this first phase is really the site preparation for a 20-acre, in essence, park where these pieces from bridges will be brought. And it not only will serve for our engineering staff to do research on that, but is really going to serve as a national source for the research on bridge construction and inspection. And so not only will NDOT directly benefit with this, but will benefit the rest of the nation and other states as well. So it's a really interesting project that's going to be funded through NDOT funds from federal funding.
And would this project be one of those that beginning July the 1st, you would not be bringing before the Budget Committee?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. In
Because
fact, the last 3 projects, or
Can't hear me?
2
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yep.
So this my comment was this project beginning July the 1st, because it's less than $2 million, would not come before the Budget Committee in the future. So I'm just kind of watching this to see what that significance is.
Yes,
there.
and the 2 previous projects also would not have.
Okay, and then item number 9.
Item number 9, a lot of you are familiar with the arrangement and financing of what is now known as Lyles Porter Hall, which is our Health and Human Sciences facility. It also is the new home for the IU Medical School operation in Lafayette. And so we currently have a handshake arrangement with Indiana University regarding the facilities that are in the basement of Lynn Hall, which a lot of you saw. And so we felt, given that we're going to have a new building and a new home for this, it'd be best to formalize this relationship and have a formal lease between us and IU. They have reviewed this lease and have signed off on it, and so we are ready to move this lease forward. Because IU provided $6 million worth of gifts for the building itself, we felt it only fair to only charge them $1 a year for the space.
So is this space, some of the space, is this used for one of these regional campuses for the medical school where we have students that are being trained and educated at places other than the main
Yes, sir.
Indianapolis campus? Okay. Any questions on item number 9? Number 10.
The last one that I have this afternoon is a lease renewal in Intech Park, which is located off of 465 and 71st Street. And as I understand, it's the only privately owned certified technology park in the state. We have operated our Central Indiana Region Technical Assistance Program out of that for some time. We also have out of our School of Pharmacy a medical education facility for us to do drug awareness with pharmacists on drug abuse and medication safety. And so this is a renewal of that existing lease.
Questions? Item number 10. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Cynthia Brinker, Vice President for Government and University Relations at the University of Southern Indiana, has 3 projects today.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. The university requests the release of funds for renovation of our biology department, which is in our science center. We constructed the science center in 1969, and we have not done major renovation to the lower level of this building since the building was constructed. We plan to update the laboratory facilities as well as the flooring, ceiling within the building. It's about an 18,000 square foot project, and we're requesting $1.25 million for the project. Any questions?
Questions? Okay, item number 12.
Okay, thank you. This is renovation to our technology center. The technology center was built in 1976, and it's one of the oldest buildings on our campus. We constructed the Business and Engineering Center and opened it in 2010, and then the Applied Engineering Center was opened in the fall of 2013. So we've moved all of the engineering and technology programs out of the Technology Center, and the Art Department has moved into the Technology Building. So we are renovating the building to equip it for the use that it's being used for right now, which is for the Art Department. And the request is for $750,000.
Questions? Okay, item number 13, your conference center.
Yes. The university is currently in the middle of a capital campaign, and we received a very generous gift from one of our donors of $5 million to construct a conference center. For those of you who've been on our campus, this conference center is going to be built to the west of Reflection Lake, which we don't have currently any construction on that side of the lake. It's on the back side of where the university home is located. It's a beautiful facility that's going to look back over campus. This is where the donor wanted it to be constructed. So we will be using the $5 million to construct the facility, which will seat about 150 people, be used for alumni events and other events with private events that want to come on campus, as well as our foundation. And then we need to do some road improvements as well as construct some parking adjacent to the facility for the people that will be using it, because there's the lake and there's a dam that separates I guess it would be on the south side of the lake, where we have to do some road improvements as you approach the conference center.
Have you announced who the donor is on this, Cynthia?
We have not.
You have not, okay.
No.
Well,
But
whoever,
we will.
whoever
Probably in
that
July.
whoever that is, we appreciate their
Well,
generosity.
thank you very much. I will let that person know.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We just finished spending $41 million. Well, okay, let's do that. Chairman Brown has other commitments, and he may not be able to stay here. Normally, we vote on the spending items plus the review items, and I think it's probably most important we have it on the record that we did approve the spending items. So at this time, I would ask if there's any motions to remove any items from this agenda on the spending items to this point. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adopt the approved agenda with respect to the spending items.
I move that we approve the agency projects.
Second.
And the university projects. All the university folks stood up when you. All right, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that carries, and we'll go into the review items. And Dr. Brown, thank you for coming today. We appreciate you being here, and whenever you need to leave, well, feel free to do so. We do have 6 review items that we'll go through, starting with the Medicaid plan state amendments. And is Pat here today? Pat Nolting has been helping us month by month on this, and we had asked in the last budget bill that FSSA give us meeting reviews of the changes that were occurring to the Medicaid program due to the changes in the Affordable Care Act and other issues that we have on this, so that we could keep the Budget Committee up to speed. So Pat, welcome back, and we'll be glad to hear from you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Kenley and members of the committee. I'm here to present.
You need to maybe pull that mic a little closer there.
Can you hear me now?
No.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Great.
I made the same mistake. I went halfway through the meeting and I wasn't on the mic.
Well, in case you didn't hear me earlier, good afternoon, Chairman
thank
Kenley
you.
and members of the committee. I'm here to present on 2 Medicaid state plan amendments and 5 home and community-based services waiver amendments. And the document you have in front of you starts with the first state plan amendment, and that is number 14001, and it's labeled brand medically necessary. And this change is necessitated by the state law that was enacted last year that modifies the generic substitution law to allow a practitioner to use words other than brand medically necessary on their prescription. And because we had the old statutory language in our state plan, we have to modify the language in our state plan to reflect the current legislation. And then we also have another change that's required by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and that pertains to language that discusses the non-coverage of two classes of drugs that are covered under the Medicare program for members who are eligible for Medicaid and Medicare. CMS has directed us to remove that restrictive language out of our state plan. It has really no impact on our operant policy. It's just generally a house cleaning agenda item. And both of those changes have no fiscal impact.
So whenever we pass a bill that affects our Medicaid services in this way, you have to go to CMS and see if you have to alter the state plan, and then they review basically the contents of that legislative action.
Yes, sir. Some legislative initiatives require a state plan amendment, others do not.
Okay.
This one did. The other state plan amendment we have is number 14002, and it, excuse me, applies to our Medicaid Rehabilitation Option Program, and that is a program that is provided by the community mental health centers. And here again, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services has directed us to modify the state plan to more clearly indicate that the MRO services are provided exclusively by the community mental health centers. And that does not have a fiscal impact. And there are 5 home and community-based services waiver amendments that we are required to submit to CMS. And these changes are necessary because, as you may know, we're converting from a 209B status state to a 1634 status state. And that change in eligibility methodology has to be reflected in all 5 of our current waivers. These changes have no impact, no fiscal impact, because the fiscal impact was represented in the earlier state plan amendment that opted for converting from 209B status to 1634.
So when we have this document in front of us where they talk about the aged and disabled waiver, and they say the federal budget impact, and they have 13.3 and 8.5.
That's item 2 that I
Okay.
want to talk about.
I'm sorry.
As far as the waiver, the aged and disabled waiver is concerned, we are also increasing the number of available slots by 814.
Okay.
And the increase in the number of participants on that waiver will have a fiscal impact as noted in the document.
Now, when we have that kind of a fiscal impact on this, are we doing this voluntarily, or are we doing this to stay in compliance with federal requirements, or are we doing this because even though there is a fiscal impact, it does avoid other costs that we might have? Can you help me with that line of thought, if you follow what I'm asking?
Yeah, I understand your question. I unfortunately don't have the answers
Okay.
to those. I can get that information and communicate back to you.
Well, I guess,
But generally in general, a waiver by its very definition should not, in the aggregate, in terms of your overall Medicaid budget, increase program expenditures.
well, that's what I thought, but this is obviously indicating some budget increase, and so I didn't know if we were doing that because there was another advantage that it was giving us in some other form of savings, or whether it was perhaps a requirement of the federal government that we just had to belly up to the bar and meet, or what was going on.
Let me check into that for you.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, Representative Brown.
I've had some providers of services talk about, as we transition from the to the 1915 status, from spend down to Social Security determination, that there's some administrative costs with providers, specifically some in the nursing home industry. Are you aware of some of the paperwork requirements that are being pushed down to providers?
Would this be in conjunction with the development of Miller Trust?
Probably. I think that there's also just some paperwork as you ask them to go through this, but I think some of the Miller Trust issues, yes, are there.
I'm not aware of a concern that's been raised to us about increased administrative costs to providers. I'm familiar with the advent of the Miller Trust, and it was my general understanding that the development of a Miller Trust, that the expense associated with that, I think, can be offset against the Miller Trust itself, but I'll check into that.
Thank you.
Senator Tyne, did you have?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, with the increase in slots for the waivers, are we saving money because they're at home instead of in a nursing home? Are we keeping 800 people out of nursing home care?
Well, these would be individuals who, I don't know if it's a diversionary or not. I do know that to be eligible for the waiver, you have to meet a nursing home level of care.
Right, so that's my, you were asking about whether we're increasing costs, and I'm asking whether this is an offset, whether it's a less cost to do waivers than it is if they were on Medicaid.
Well, the cost should be no greater than if they're not on the waiver. I just need to go back to the folks that put the fiscal together so that I can more clearly explain the basis for.
I think that would be helpful to get a little clarification there so we know what we're doing. And then I think an additional part of that would be whether or not this was, if this is an increased fiscal impact, whether or not it's one that was anticipated or projected by the Milliman forecast that we had December of last year. In other words, was this accounted for in that forecast?
Senator, I can actually
Yeah,
respond
Brian,
to that one.
please,
This
help
was
us.
part of the Medicaid forecast, so we were anticipating this.
Okay, so
as part of that.
in any event, this was an anticipated expense
That's correct.
increase. And I guess maybe just a little, you've got help coming up behind you here.
So basically what this does is with the
You
increase.
need to get that mic closer to you. There you go.
Basically what this does is it stays up with the demand we're having to get people on the wait list. So to avoid having another wait list for the A&D waiver, we're increasing our slots to keep up with that demand. If we didn't increase these slots, we would have the potential of getting a wait list. But Brian is correct that in our Milliman forecast, we have included these expenditures. So this isn't anything addition to our current Milliman forecast. It is already built into that.
Okay. But it is an additional number of people being eligible for services prior to our prior standard before we requested this waiver would be
Yes,
correct?
that would be,
Okay.
that would be correct.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments? Thank you, Brian, and your, okay. Pat, what else do you have there? That's it. Did you cover the ones on page 3?
Yes, every one of the waivers is impacted in the same manner in terms
Okay.
of the fact that we need to modify each to reflect that effective June 1st, we're going to be using a different basis
Okay.
for determining a member's eligibility for Medicaid.
Okay. I hope Dr. Brown understands all that. I don't. I rely on him.
Change from a spend down to Social Security determination of the disability. So, and again, the spend down unit was so, spend down way of determining the Medicare, Medicaid mix was so inefficient and cumbersome and was failing patients as well as failing providers.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. right, anything else you have for us, Pat?
No.
Okay, thank you. If you could just help us understand, if you need to get back to us with a written explanation or something. I think we've covered it, but think about it and see if we need to know more. We need to be as educated as we can in this area when we get ready for our budget next year.
Okay.
Thank you. Next, Department of Education. We have the iStep plus remediation, preventive remediation distribution. Also, the graduation qualifying exam remediation grant distribution and the Excellence in Performance Awards for Teachers Grants, item number 4. Item number 4 is the, when we did the budget, Senator Mishler had developed a $30 million a year performance funding grant, which was pretty much based on just the raw numbers that there were performance in the schools. And then in addition, there was a $2 million a year performance funding award for people who might be in schools that might not otherwise qualify. And the Department of Education took on the challenge of figuring out how that could be distributed and be used to motivate and reward teachers in those types of facilities. So I'll let you all proceed through these items. And we have, from the DOE, we have Michelle Walker and Sarah, how do you want me to say that? Peas, okay. Wasn't pies and it wasn't PAs, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Michelle Walker. I'm the Director of Assessment at the Indiana Department of Education. And to you and the members of the committee, I appreciate the opportunity to share with you the distributions for your review for the iStep remediation as well as the GQE remediation. So starting with the iStep remediation, as a quick review, this is in arrears, so it's from the previous year's administration as we are starting next Monday, beginning the multiple choice session for 2013-14. But we do look at the students who actually have not demonstrated proficiency on the assessment, so those students who have not scored pass or pass plus in math, English, science, and social studies. In grades 3 through 8 is the iStep distribution. It is divided into 3 tiers, so the students who are farthest from the cut score or furthest from passing are actually generating the most dollars. So if you'll see in the memorandum, the first tier is $14.56 per student. The second tier is $7.28 per student, and tier 3 is $3.64 cents per student. Again, this is based on the 2012-13 school year administration. And what I'd like to do is entertain any questions on this one before we move to the GQE, if that's appropriate.
Any questions on the remediation dollars? No questions.
Okay.
All right.
The second memorandum is about the GQE remediation dollars. And this, of course, is for our graduation qualifying exam, which at this time is our end of course assessments in Algebra 1 and English 10. There are not 3 tiers for this one. This is actually just a solid distribution based on students who are not proficient. The distribution this year, based on, again, on the 2012-13 school year, is $107.19 per student per content area for those students who did not demonstrate proficiency. Are there any questions on this particular distribution?
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the Excellence Performance Grant, and as you have before you, it is an appropriation of $2 million, and it was eligible for districts that had a focus or priority Title I served school, so it'd be a D or an F Title I served school. They were eligible to apply for the grant. We took the number of teachers that were deemed effective or highly effective during the 12-13 school year and divided that number by the 2 million. So each teacher, which is around over 4,000 teachers, will receive $461 as a one-time cash award for being deemed as effective or highly effective during the 12-13 school year. Would be awarding 152 schools, including 7 charters and including 55 school corporations.
When you did this, it says the schools had to apply, were there any many schools that were eligible that did not apply?
Yes, I would say only around 25% of schools that were eligible applied for the grant.
Only 25% that were eligible did apply.
Correct.
And do you have any explanation as to why that would be? Or did you have make any inquiry of them or others?
You know what? I really don't know why we didn't. We posted this on our DOE dialogue, which goes out from Superintendent Ritz on a weekly basis on a Monday. We posted on the Learning Connection, which we have our own community for developing new Indiana evaluations. So we did it through different kinds of blasts. We left the application period open for over a month for them to apply, and it was a very simple application. It was actually a cover letter. Yeah.
Well, let me make a couple of comments. First off, this was a first-time exercise and a first-time appropriation by the General Assembly, so it's a new program. And Dr. Ritz agreed to and wanted to try to do this for those types of schools. And so as we prepare for the next budget cycle and the upcoming legislative session, probably the continuation of the program depends on whether we think it has a merit or a value or move the needle in some way in terms of performance. And so it might be helpful if you could, through whatever techniques you want to use, try to determine, why people did apply, why they didn't apply, what they thought the benefit of the program was, maybe even an evaluation by the schools that did apply as to what the benefit was. And then I noticed that you actually came down to a hard count of effective and highly effective teachers, and then you just divided that total into the $2 million so that everybody got a flat grant. And I think I would be interested, and Senator Mishler also worked with me on this, as well as the folks in the House worked on it. I would be interested in your thoughts or your advice or your evaluation as to whether or not there should be some discretion at the part of the school leadership to determine how awards should be distributed. For example, anecdotally, we can all think of maybe one teacher in a building who does some significant things. Maybe there should be a little greater recognition there or not. And so I would like for the DOE to, now that you've done this once, to kind of review what you've done, make recommendations as to how you think it might be done better, consider some of the thoughts that I've inserted here about how it ought to happen, and so that we can get ready for the next budget cycle to determine, number one, do we want to continue the program? Do we want to not do it? Do we want to enlarge it? How do we want to do that? So those are my thoughts. I'd welcome any other input. Senator Skinner, you have any thoughts on this issue?
Had all of the schools that were eligible to apply, what would that have reduced the amount of increase to?
Very, very small amount.
So, by 3/4 possibly, right?
Oh, yes.
So we're talking about $115?
I think when we first estimated, of course, when we estimated, we did not have the amount of teachers that were effective and highly effective. As you know, that just was released during the state board meeting this past couple of weeks ago. I think we estimated it to be pretty close to around $150 if every, with our high estimates. So it would have been a lot less.
And after taxes, is it worth it?
Yeah. Another thought that I have that I guess I'd like to know, you divided it equally among highly effective and effective, and I wonder whether you think there ought to be any distinction made between those two categories, for example. So those are all just thoughts that I have in thinking about it. Anyone else care to weigh in on this one? Senator Italian.
Yeah, and I just am wondering, how do I find out? I mean, I see in my district, for example, there's nobody on here. how do I find out whether any of my schools applied? Do you have that information I could check with you?
Yes, absolutely. And I can also, on our Title I website, or excuse me, on our DOE's website, we have a list of focus and priority schools. And so you can see all the schools that were actually eligible to apply, and then I can also provide a list of those
Okay.
that actually applied for the grant.
Okay.
Anyone that applied, I should say this, anyone that applied that, those variables that are listed on that front page of the cover letter, so were they a focus and priority school? Did they submit a cover letter with a superintendent's signature? Are they using an evaluation plan, which is key right now? So we had some districts that settled their contract prior to the evaluation law going into effect, so they're not really rating their teachers as effective or highly effective. So if they were eligible and all those were kind of checked off, they will receive the grant. They're on this list.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, ladies. Mark? Bashan, with the IEDC, we have a couple of items for review from the IEDC on awards that you plan to make. So let's see, how many are there? One,
We
two?
have 3 investments.
Okay. 3.
First of which is a Precision Hawk USA. They operate a aerial vehicle which is unmanned, and this company's got a very interesting science behind it, where they've taken a radio-controlled plane and using software and sensors have come up with a product for about $25,000 that a farmer can launch over his farm fields in the ag side, and there's other applications, and within 2 hours from the cloud get a reading back as to how much nitrogen is in his field, maybe where he missed his watering. And very exciting in this space of drones. In the future, there's going to be some work done at the federal level, I think in September of 2015, where this market may just explode and this company may be positioned. We're asking for $2 million. It'll be private co-investment of $3 million alongside, so it's a 3-2 match.
So your investment, and just to review, and I know we've been through this before with other awards, but your investment would be up to $2 million. You're requiring a private co-investment of at least $3 million. And then what form does, hi Steve, what form does your
it's convertible debt.
Convertible debt, okay. Any questions on the Precision Hawk
Yes.
proposal? Yes, Senator Talian and then Representative Gooden.
Thank you. Can you explain to me who and where, how are you creating jobs with this money? I mean, you've got a headcount plan here of 103 jobs. You've got unmanned aerial vehicles running around and then transmitting data to someplace. I mean, can you explain how this business works and where do you create jobs?
Well, I think there's the manufacturing piece, there's a software piece, and there's a maintenance piece to this, a services side. And
I'm Chad Pittman, for the record, the Executive Vice President, Chief of Staff of the IADC. Good to see you all again. I think the other part is in this unmanned system space. It's high science, so you have lots of engineers, computer software engineers, aerospace engineers. This Precision Hawk, for example, had significant engagement with Purdue University, Department of Ag, as well as Indiana State University from the operators of the systems as well on the ground. So having a guy who, again, had the opportunity to use unmanned systems in the areas where they're really developed for, and excited about the opportunity to, i.e. Iraq, a couple years, and see them here, just because there's not a pilot in the system.
Oh, I didn't expect there to be a pilot. I just wondered where the jobs are.
So there's significant, for every one of our unmanned systems, small systems, we'd have 3 or 4 people operating that system, from the operators, from the people observing it, and so forth and so on. So But that's the types of jobs at this organization.
And are these units, are these drone things manufactured here?
That's the plan. That's what we're competing for.
Oh, that's what you're doing? You're manufacturing these products?
So the research and development, the design, as well as the manufacturing. We're competing for the whole A to Z.
Okay.
Representative Gooden, I think, had a question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I guess just a little dialogue here. As you know, in the last legislative session, these things are, they're called Precision Hawk USA, AKA drones. And I think there was some legislation filed in the Senate that outlawed drones. So I think as we work through this, we probably should be careful about where we send our money, and then if we decide that they shouldn't be allowed in Indiana. But just a heads up on what these are and what we're getting ready to give the money to. Not that I'm against, but just a heads up. Thank you.
We didn't pass it.
No, it didn't pass. But
It was an item of intense discussion in the hallways. All right. Emerging Threats Pro, LLC.
Yes, here we have a company that provides a software service analysis of security, cybersecurity, and their service updates their client base with the latest, greatest information in order to how to defeat these security issues. We're placing $500,000 against a minimum of $200,000 in order to get these guys on. These folks do have some clients, I understand, that will take them far, and there'll be significant growth. Also convertible debt.
Okay. Any questions with respect to this proposal? All right. Solstice Medical, Fort Wayne.
This is a firm that uses radio technology chips, similar to like what you see in the stores, to use within surgical centers to make sure that all the components before and after a surgery are accounted for. And they've done some testing in IU medical and hospital systems, and I guess in 11 of their hospitals. And they've seen an incredible return on their investment, a very promising way to manage the inventory within a surgical center. Convertible debt, $1 million against $1 million in private placement.
Yes. Questions? Comments? Senator Talion.
Thank you. And I guess this is for all of these projects. Two things. Are these loans or grants?
They are convertible debt, so they start out as a loan.
And then?
In the end, the end game of most of these is that they grow and they are purchased. And at that time, the loan is converted to equity or stock, and the fund is paid back.
Okay.
So the intent of that is to create a evergreen fund. I believe Secretary Hassler presented to this board November 2012 with the idea of when people hit it and they have great success, to get the taxpayers' money back into the system. So hopefully we don't have to come back, keep asking for taxpayer money. So this has evolved from a grant to a system we had in 05 to probably 2010 to the convertible debt to, again, try to protect the taxpayers' interest of getting their share of success back.
All right. And then what? How do we work the job projections? Are there any guarantees or any baseline, anything that they have to match?
So on our normal, like when we talk about the next deal, the Edge for Retention deal coming up, those are measured by jobs, and that fund is actually funded through the withholding taxes. Really, the way the 21 fund has evolved is to try to create an environment that creates the conditions for new high-growth ventures to develop in Indiana. The exact targets, hopefully the next BAE that we'll talk about will be headquartered not in the UK, but will be headquartered in Fort Wayne, Indiana, internationally. So really, the check against this is the co-investment, the private co-investment to generate that entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Indiana. So that's
You know, and Chad might also want to go back into part of what gives you the confidence that you're going to have the job creation and the success that you're looking for is that you hinge all of these on a private investment being made as well, so that somebody else is at risk in this process. But then secondarily, the vetting process is pretty intense, and I've spent some time trying to ask these questions. Your questions are good, and I've asked the same ones, but I'd ask Chad just to explain basically what the level of intensity is from the time that somebody shows up with a proposal or an idea or a request, and what they kind of go through, and who the experts are that we have evaluating these things to determine whether or not we're going to participate in the program as described here. So
Great.
help us a little bit there.
So thank you, Senator. So real quick, I'd like to point out Teen Goody, who we recruited from University of Indiana, in our MBA program, who works on the front end of the evaluation. So someone knocks on the door with an idea, or you can sit down if you like, knocks on the door with an idea and or a concept for a business. I'd go one step further. Something we've worked very closely with this group here and the entire legislative branch as well as the executive branch over the years is actually be more purposeful about going out into the marketplace across the state and to generate more of these opportunities. In this case, you have Fort Wayne, Noblesville, and Lafayette. So an idea comes in, and Ting and her team evaluate that idea. And I'll let her get into the weeds of what that looks like. But it's a pretty intense process. There's a review on the business plan review. Does this business make sense? Is it a need in the marketplace? And then there's a kind of a scientific peer review, or I would say a review. So will this technology actually work? Does the IP, does the intellectual property matter? So at that point, that first phase of team looks at it, does probably oftentimes months, if not longer, of due diligence, and then it goes to their investment committee to make an internal committee to make a recommendation to the IEDC management team. That is generally Mark Bashon, our CFO, sits in through the review process. And then so you have the Secretary of Commerce, sometimes is in or not, but the president of the IEDC. I'm often in these meetings, and a number of other people who review it internally from management's viewpoint of the IEDC to say, hey, we have more questions, does this make sense, let's go through the financials. And all we do is we make a recommendation to the IEDC board's entrepreneurship committee. And that committee is composed of Angela Brawley, help me here.
Dane Miller.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just
Yeah, that's right, Kip Tom, Dane Miller.
Kip Tom, Dane Miller, Angela Brawley, Rick Johnson, and John Thompson, all very successful entrepreneurs here in the state of Indiana. Just kind of wind back a little bit. My name is Teen Goody. I have the pleasure to present some of past project to you. In the past, I've been serving as Vice President of Investment at Elevate Ventures. We are a partner to the IEDC. My team and I were responsible for setting up the investment policies, setting up processes to both front-end, oversee front-end deal sourcing, deal evaluation, and the back-end portfolio management activities. So as Chad mentioned previously, from the time that a company gets to our online portal and submit an online application, it takes normally 3 to 6 months for them to get to this stage where we had a chance to review this project with you. That process typically involves multiple group review sessions, includes we have our entrepreneur residents, which we call it domain expertise, entrepreneurs that have
started companies before, know the space, typically exited their ventures, are successful. They have passion to help new entrepreneurs and help grow companies here in Indiana. We engage them and to help work with these companies to get them to a fundable stage. So that's when the company will come in with a presentable plan, and we collectively make an investment commitment decision. And after that, it's a lengthy 50 checkpoint due diligence process. It includes various documentation, includes customer reference checks, management reference checks, and then to the point where we progress into the IEDC review, IEDC, the board approval, and here to you guys.
Senator Talion, I've had to deal with these over the last couple of years on a fairly regular basis, because what will happen is a state representative or a state senator will come to me and they'll say, hey, I've got this company, they applied, they didn't get it, what's the problem here? And so I've worked back on the ones that they got rejected and had an opportunity, you might say, to view this from that perspective. And it's a pretty rigorous process. And this is all, this is in some ways, historically been a function of government. If you go back to when the United States was working with the railroads to put railroads clear across the nation, I mean, government was involved in incentivizing business in that context. And over time, this has become a very highly sophisticated, highly technical, and highly problematic in some stories that we hear about, read about, know about, of what states do to buy a business or to buy jobs that never actually materialize. And so the product that we have here today is a very rigorous process. And actually the people who are on that entrepreneurial committee who serve the state of Indiana, I mean, these are very, very successful, mostly technology people who are giving of their time freely to the state of Indiana to share their expertise in the type of thinking that it takes to get to these places. And so and then we have the budget committee review process as one more check and balance to make sure that this system works and that the whole thing is appropriate. And the other side of the coin is, as you ask, is how do we know that the jobs materialize? Now, these investments, we're now issuing debt, so we have ways to legally try to collect. I suppose that if the thing completely fails, there's going to be some that we're not going to collect on. But many of the actual tax credits that we give companies in Indiana, they are not collectible until the job actually occurs. And you know, Ohio has made a pretty big splash in the last year or two. We've had some trouble competing with Ohio because Ohio is just giving them the money up front, and that's it. And so I think your questions are completely fair and go to the point. This does take a fair amount of effort to kind of finally work your way through the process, and I've done that three times in the same way that you're asking questions today to make sure that we're on top of this. I have a lot of confidence in the work that they are doing, and even though we have changed administrations here, I still feel that we're successfully attracting businesses and doing what we need to do to be on our game plan, but at the same time, we're protecting the taxpayers' regards and rights. And of course, another review will be when we do another budget and decide to authorize them money for this entity. So, you know, that's kind of an overview picture of the thing, but I've paid a lot of attention to it myself to try to make sure I'm comfortable with the process.
Well, and that's part of what I was getting at. I mean, I know that we're going to be looking at budget requests, and I'm not really questioning your technical review aspect of this. I guess what I'm looking at is you know, how do we look at these companies, how do we as a budget committee look at these companies 3 years later or 4 years later and say, Where are they now? Have they produced what we thought? And how do we get a big picture of the previous projects?
So a couple maybe comments on that. One, those are great questions, and I wish they were easy answers. But what I will say is, from a broad perspective, we've worked with Mike Hicks at Ball State University to do a deep analysis of this program going back to 1998 and the evolution of that program. There was a study I think he released maybe 2 or 3 years ago that said basically on track was his assessment, but it's going to take a generation to know if these things are making a difference or not. I mean, candidly, I wish I could tell you like right now, hey, we should do this or we shouldn't do this from my view in the field, but I can't tell you that. What I will tell you though, from when I got here in 2009 and we're looking at this, evaluating these with Secretary Robe at the time, and there's really just the two of us before we had the 21 Fund team really stood up. It's what I saw was we had a lot of good ideas around the state, but the ability to execute on those ideas which was not necessarily where it could be and needs to be, the business acumen. So we've invested a lot, again, with the help of this body and Senator Kinley, on saying what are the things we can put around the idea and the investment to enhance the likelihood for success. Not necessarily just on Precision Hawk or Emerging Threats Pro or any discrete deal. Maybe Precision Hawk doesn't work. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be great and successful on their behalf, but what are the people involved in that opportunity? What do they learn? What are the maybe they come up with the next thing that the sensor that revolutionizes precision farming, right? I mean, but that's the business acumen to learn from pursuing these ventures, and the things we've come up with are the EIRs, what you're very, I think, familiar with here in this group, or some of you are. It's been presented before, I believe, are the regional REAPs. They're regional business groups that are standing up on their own, raising money to create somewhat of angel networks, if you will, to catalyze investment growth and new idea generation in their local communities. So it's early in the process, in the REAP process. We're working with, we're trying to deepen our ties and connections with the universities. The SBIR program that you're all very familiar with, that we've done for years, we're taking a look at that. How do we reinvigorate the SBIR program in such a matter that again, over my time here, it wasn't a failed program. It was really, as we all recall, 2008, 9, 10 were very tough years financially, and there was significant budget cuts. But I think we saw some things in our evaluation, our analysis, that there were SBIR farms. People had generated SBIR grants to get the matches, or they got our matches, but it never progressed into companies like Precision Hawk that will hopefully be manufacturing unmanned systems here. So I think we've got some ideas and learning and worked across the board to hopefully revise that program to make it better. I mean, we're talking to the different universities, with this board's request, and because it makes sense to how do we really leverage those institutions and the incredible ideas being created there as well. So to me, these deals are just they're the discrete transactions that come out of those, but for these to get really good, I mean, to have 5 more exact targets, right, or Angie's List, or Cook Pharmaceuticals, right? I mean, talk about a great story.
Now, you do an annual report to the General Assembly. Does it cover any kind of a review of these activities?
Yeah, our annual report covers.
Yes, 21 Fund does have an annual report. It covers this
You
activities.
need to get right on that mic, because it's...
Yeah, 21 Fund does have an annual report, and we report on an annual basis the new investments we made. But to answer Senator Talian's questions more directly, that we also do annual surveys of the past grantees, and we also recently just completed a portfolio survey of
Yeah.
30 companies that's currently in our portfolio that we have invested in since 2010. So give you a frame of reference, since 2010 is when we started implementing the private co-investment policy. For every dollar the state, 21 Fund State invested in through, that we have over $6 in private capital invested in those companies.
All right, when you do those annual reports, and maybe I just don't remember, but I don't remember seeing kind of a report of new jobs. How many, do we have actual new jobs? Is that in those reports?
No, not in those reports, but in the annual survey and portfolio report we do, that we'd be happy to share a summary with you. Those contain
Okay,
those
all right,
numbers.
yeah, I would
Yep.
like to see that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I might mention one more thing, Senator Talley, a discussion point that I've had with the IEDC. As we traveled last summer, when we went to Notre Dame, they had this program for these graduate students where they were mentoring them about how you develop a business idea and working with them. Ball State has the entrepreneurial program, which is an all or nothing program, and you take this course and you have to have this review by these business people, and if they don't approve of your plan, you fail the course. You either made it or you didn't. And also, IU with the Kelley School and Purdue with the Krannert School, they have very similar models. And I've asked the IEDC, and they have followed up on this, about how you put that culture also into this process to try to help to improve it. It is very, very complicated. It's very hard work. It doesn't follow. We can't write a standardized SOP that says you do it the same way every time. It just doesn't work that way. And so we're doing what we can, or they're doing what they can, and they've been very cooperative with me in my discussions and requests. And that's why, to some extent, one of the questions that came up with the IEDC was, they say, well, gee, we're getting ready to make a deal here, and everything's going to be great, and we're going to do great things for the state of Indiana. Why do we have to wait for the budget committee to review something? Is that what happens if that slows us down? And we've talked to them, and about if they have a project that they think that there is a time-sensitive nature to it, about maybe using a walkthrough process on our approval as opposed to. So there are lots of elements to this, and in even the bigger picture, if you look, I think that you could say that California, particularly Northern California, the Boston area, Austin, Texas, North Carolina was in there. They had a lot of people who had been involved in a lot of enormous technology company successes, that they were investing in new ideas, just like you'd go down to the gas station and buy a lottery ticket. They had so much money that they could just afford to take a shot everywhere, and that's called angel investor money and second-tier money. And Indiana has a limited quantity of that, but we have shown that we have some real technology skills, for example, in central Indiana in the biosciences, up there in the northeast Indiana and Senator Mishler's area. We have some pockets where Indiana is actually making a dent in that market. And I think the IEDC is part of the reason and the effort of why we're making a dent. And we're digressing a lot here, but I think this is a very important discussion. And anything else?
Well, we welcome all the feedback.
You do have one more item on the list here, this Project Airplane, which is a different approach where you are doing EDGE for retention tax credits that does require a review. So let's take care of that.
Yeah, great, Senator, appreciate it. And then for this project, Brooke Steed, who's our regional director up in northeast Indiana, he did a great job working this project, so I'll let him get into the weeds. It's an interesting project. But just one more comment, if I may, Senator. Anytime anybody wants to sit down with us like you have and sit down and get into the weeds, we learn from it as well. We appreciate that. On BAE, this is a project, I'll let Brooke cover kind of the deal points and the overall business, what the opportunity is, and then I'll kind of get into the financials of what we go through. And I think it's a good example, Senator, of how we evaluate these things and try to protect the taxpayer's risk.
Thank you, Chad. Good afternoon. BAE is a British-owned aerospace company, British Aerospace Engineering. They employ approximately 1,000 people in Fort Wayne, making them one of the largest employers in Northeast Indiana, an average wage of around $26 an hour. The investment overall, around $32.3 million, that will involve the construction of a new facility. BAE is currently housed in a World War II era building. In fact, the roof is built so that it could be flooded back during World War II to make it look like a reservoir to avoid spy planes and bombing. So roughly at $26 an hour, you're looking at around a $54 million payroll. So you understand the significance to our region. The relocation was going to occur because they're actually leasing from GE, which is also their largest customer. GE had some deferred maintenance that needed to be done to the building, and negotiations broke down on their new lease, so they decided to look elsewhere. And with that came the opportunity for them to also pursue options in Northwest Ohio. This was played up in the media out of that part of the state. Ohio, as you mentioned earlier, Senator, has become more and more aggressive with their incentive packages, basically buying jobs. We still don't believe in doing that, but we saw this as an opportunity to make a request for EDGE for retention. This request was not made lightly. We did have the local economic development organization in Fort Wayne. They actually hired a site location consultant to look at what the state of Ohio could do. They estimated that the Ohio could put together an incentive package of at least $30 to $40 million to attract over 1,000 jobs, and again, around a $32 million program for that investment. It should also be noted that we've had numerous projects with BAE in the past, and BAE has always gone beyond their projections. While they're not projecting new jobs for this project, I'm not going to be surprised if, 2 years from now, they've gone far beyond the 1,000 new employees. The retained employees. Thank you, Chad.
I wish there was 1,000 new employees. That'd be great. Again, from Ohio's viewpoint, if we were on their side, right, of the table, these would be all new jobs, all new investment. And it was very clear that when BAE has to move, they had to physically move. When they load their trucks up, it's not that much of an effort to move from Fort Wayne to Fort Wayne or Fort Wayne to Ohio. So that definitely upped the ante. I've had the privilege of visiting their headquarters in the UK twice since my time here, and they are definitely pro-Indiana, and they're big fans of our quality of work in the Fort Wayne area. Their executive team's been here significantly over the last couple of years, evaluating this deal and this opportunity in their Fort Wayne operation. So I just want to point out a few things, if I may, Senator. I think in your packets you have the analyses that we look at. In this deal, we look at, if you have a form that shows the BAE Systems Control cash flow scenarios, looks something like this. Every deal we do, we want to make sure the state is not upside down. The taxpayers are not upside down in the deal, and we're not taking financial risk. So in this scenario, we have the top scenario. Scenario one is BAE's projections for retention in this case, and if that bears out per their projections. In this situation, Indiana would be, our net present value over the course of this deal would be $11.2 million of positive revenue impact into the general fund through the taxes collected. And this is just looking at payroll taxes, withholdings. And then we do a worst case scenario, and that is, in this situation, the worst case scenario, in essence, would be, let's say they stayed here for 7 years, and then left. Now, if they left, when a company leaves the state, they say, hey, we're picking up and leaving, so long. Well, great, good luck, all those things, but to leave, you're going to have to write a check to pay back all the incentives that the good Hoosiers have given you over the course of the deal. So if they were to, but in a scenario where there is no money or they go bankrupt or something like that, so they leave, we've given them their tax credits, and there's no clawback opportunity. In this situation, our worst case scenario at 7 years would be still a net present value of a $5.1 million positive revenue impact to the state, tax impact to the state. So again, every deal we do this analysis. As a matter of fact, every deal has a form like this. It's a spreadsheet. And I will say it's an incredible tool that you've given us to make it easy, to not be upside down. To when companies say, hey, North Carolina is going to give us $75 million. We say, we'll go to North Carolina.
Chad, I think it was the last time we used a significant edge for retention credit, the Rolls-Royce deal here in Indianapolis.
Yeah, that was a deal that I was not personally party to, but my predecessor, Chad Sweeney, and actually the previous administration, I don't know who the personnel, the IDC or Department of Commerce at the time were. Yeah, that was, I don't think they used edge for retention, if I recall. It's been almost 10 years. But that was a significant deal. I will say, Senator, if you don't mind, we have used this tool, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 times going back to 2009.
Okay.
And I can cover kind of geographically what that looks like and the amount, if that's helpful, what we've done.
Well, I think that when you talk about edge for retention or any other business where you're really retaining jobs, there's statutorily some special hoops that you have to jump through in order to make this thing be legal and be justifiable, and that is you have to have some pretty obvious and complete proof that if you don't do this, you could lose the client on this arrangement. And so as we talk about trying to help private companies and using government dollars, this even gets harder when you talk about just retention type deals, because you're not buying a new job like Ohio, as you point out, Chad, would be in this case. So, but I do know that on the Rolls-Royce deal, we may not have used edge for retention, but we used it was a program that we designed and maybe specifically statutorily designed for that company, which was based on a retention of jobs that we had with actual no guarantee of an increase in jobs, similar to what you may have here.
Actually, when Rolls-Royce announced their consolidation in downtown Indianapolis, that deal that was cut in 2004 or 5 negotiations was very helpful for us to lever that and not having to actually put any new incentives into keeping them here or getting them to actually grow here, make that additional investment. So we did invest in extra training, which we're always happy to help invest in Hoosier training.
What questions or comment do committee or members or aldermans have? Anything specifically on this? Okay. No questions? Everybody's okay? All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now, I'm going to, since Chairman Brown is still here, and I'm glad he's still here, we did do the review items, and normally the review items we do take the opportunity to remove any items from the agenda by motion and then in the alternative to take a motion to approve the review items. So at this time, is there any motion to remove any of the review items from the agenda? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Been moved and seconded that the review items be approved. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you, members, for meeting here today. Deanna, could you advise us now what are our next dates for our next committee meeting, and where are we going to go? And just, we don't have to have a detailed outline, but thanks, Tim, for coming. I appreciate it.
The next Budget Committee meeting will take place in June on the 19th and 20th, and we will be in the Jeffersonville, Clarksville area. I don't have specifics on the itinerary yet, but I'll be working on those details in the next week or two. So.
And then we communicated via email. We tried to set up meetings for 2 more meetings after that, one in Fort Wayne and one in Richmond.
Right.
Tried to let everybody know.
Right. We will be in Fort Wayne in August. I believe the dates are the 14th and 15th.
Okay.
And then in Richmond in October, and I don't remember the dates for that.
And then we also asked committee members, gave them a list of dates where we might have potential budget hearing dates at the State House.
Right.
So, any further business discussion, questions, comments? Lunch was good, tour was good. Thank you all for your help and work putting this on. We stand adjourned.